The morning sun rose over the colony of New Sol on the planet Seongrim 7. The streets were already busy with people going to work. Miners walked toward the tunnels. Merchants opened their shops. Another ordinary day was starting on this human colony world. Do-Hyun Kim unlocked the door to his small shop. The sign above the door said, Kim's Shoe Repair in both Korean and English. Inside, the shop smelled like leather and polish. Tools hung neatly on the walls. A workbench sat in the middle of the room, worn smooth from years of use. Do-Hyun was 45 years old. His hair was starting to turn gray. His hands were strong and skilled from decades of work. He had learned his trade from his grandfather back on Earth, before the family fled during the refugee crisis. Now he made his living on this frontier world, repairing shoes for colonists. He turned on the lights and started his morning routine. First, he made tea. Then he checked the repair orders waiting for him. 3 pairs of mining boots needed new soles. A merchant's dress shoes needed polishing. A child's sneakers had a broken strap. The door chimed. His apprentice, Miho, walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee from the shop next door. The young man was only 16, but already showed promise as a craftsman. "Good morning, master," Miho said. He set 1 coffee cup on the workbench. "Why do you still make tea when I bring you coffee?" Do-Hyun smiled. "Habit. My grandfather always started the day with tea." He took a sip of the coffee anyway. "Thank you." Miho looked at the pile of work. Another busy day. "You know, master, we could get a fabricator machine. It would do all this work in minutes." This was an old argument between them. Do-Hyun picked up a mining boot and examined it carefully. A machine makes things. A craftsman makes things with soul. See this boot? The left one is more worn on the outside edge. This tells me the person who wears it walks with their weight shifted. If I just replace the sole, the same problem will happen again. He showed Mio how he would adjust the sole slightly, adding more support where it was needed. A fabricator would make 2 identical soles. I make 2 soles that fit the specific person's feet. That is the difference. Miho nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand, though he still thought the old ways were too slow. The morning passed quietly. Customers came and went. A miner picked up his repaired boots and grinned when he saw how comfortable they felt. A merchant woman praised the shine Do-Hyun had put on her shoes. Each customer was treated with respect and care. Around midday, Do-Hyun and Miho ate lunch. The apprentice scrolled through his datapad, reading news about other colonies. Do-Hyun ate in comfortable silence, watching people walk past the shop window. Late in the afternoon, something unusual happened. The shop door opened, but no person walked in. Instead, a small creature entered, moving slowly and awkwardly. Miho looked up from his work. "What is that?" The creature was about the size of a large cat. It had scales that shimmered with different colors in the light. Small wings were folded on its back. Its eyes were bright and intelligent. It chirped softly, a sound that seemed almost like speech. "Looks like somebody's pet," Do-Hyun said. He set down his tools and walked closer. "Where is your owner, little one?" The creature chirped again and sat down. It lifted 1 small foot, then another. Do-Hyun knelt down to look closer. The creature's feet were cut and bleeding. Small rocks were stuck in the wounds. "Oh, you poor thing," Do-Hyun said gently. "You have been walking on rough ground." Miho frowned. "Master, we fix shoes for people, not animals. Someone probably lost their pet. We should call animal control." Do-Hyun shook his head. "She came here for help. Look at her. She walked here deliberately, even though it hurt." He spoke to the creature in a soft voice. "Let me see your feet. Little one, I will not hurt you." The creature watched him with those intelligent eyes. Slowly, carefully, it lifted 1 foot and placed it in Do-Hyun's hand. Do-Hyun worked carefully. First, he cleaned the wound with gentle hands. The creature stayed still, trusting him completely. He removed the small stones and applied medical gel to prevent infection. Then he wrapped each foot in soft bandages. "There," he said, "but those bandages will not last long. You need proper protection for your feet." He looked at the creature thoughtfully. An idea formed in his mind. "Mio, Bring me the softest leather we have, and the smallest tools. Master, you cannot be serious, Miho said. You want to make shoes for an animal? Why not? Dohain replied. She needs them. That is what a craftsman does. We see a need, and we fill it. Miho sighed, but brought the materials. He watched as his master began the most delicate work he had ever attempted. Dohain measured each small foot carefully. He cut the leather with precision. These would be the smallest shoes he had ever made. The work was slow and required all his skill. He added soft padding inside to protect the healing wounds. He made gentle straps that would not irritate the scales. Hours passed. Miho grew impatient. Master, we have paying customers waiting. You are spending all this time on shoes for a pet that cannot even pay. Dohain did not look up from his work. She came to us in pain. Miho, what kind of craftsman turns away someone who needs help? Money is not everything. Finally, the shoes were complete. For tiny masterpieces of craftsmanship, Dohain carefully fitted them onto the creature's feet. The straps adjusted perfectly. The creature stood up and took a few experimental steps. She chirped happily. The sound was filled with obvious joy. She walked around the shop, testing the shoes. No more pain. No more limping. She could walk normally again. The creature came back to Dohain and nuzzled his hand. He patted her head gently. You are welcome, little one. Go safely now. She chirped once more, then walked to the door. Miho opened it for her. The creature paused at the threshold, looked back at Dohain one more time, then left. What Dohain did not see was the elderly man standing in the shadows across the street. The man had been there for hours, watching everything through the shop window. His eyes glowed faintly gold in the darkness of the alley. The old man watched the small creature cross the street toward him. She ran to him happily, showing off her new shoes. He bent down and examined them with great interest. The craftsmanship was exquisite. Each shoe had been made with obvious care and skill. But more than that, he had heard everything Dohain said. He had watched how the human treated his daughter with respect and kindness, even believing her to be just an animal. The man smiled slowly. This was interesting, very interesting indeed. Inside the shop, Dohain returned to his workbench. Miho shook his head. I still think you wasted the whole afternoon, master. Dohain smiled and picked up one of the waiting mining boots. Perhaps, but I helped someone who needed it. That is never a waste of time. He began working on the sole. Now, let me show you again why we adjust each sole individually. The rest of the day passed normally. They finished the mining boots. They polished the merchant's shoes. They fixed the child's sneakers. When evening came, Dohain locked up the shop and walked home to the colony streets. He felt strange, like someone was watching him. He looked around but saw nothing unusual, just other colonists heading home after work. He shook his head. It had been a long day. He was probably just tired. Dohain had no idea that his simple act of kindness would change everything. He did not know that the small creature was actually a dragon princess. He did not know that the old man in the alley was the emperor of the dragon realm. He did not know that in helping one small being in pain, he had just passed a test that would alter the future of both humans and dragons. He was just a cobbler who had done what he thought was right. And sometimes that is all it takes to change the world. Dohain arrived at his shop early the next morning. He wanted to finish some repair work before opening. But when he turned the corner onto his street, he stopped suddenly. A crowd of people stood outside his shop. Colonial security officers were there, news reporters with cameras, curious neighbors. And in the middle of it all stood Sujin Park, the diplomatic liaison for the colony. Sujin saw him and walked over quickly. She was a serious woman in her late 30s, always professional. But today she looked worried. Mr. Kim, we need to talk, she said. Her voice was urgent. What is happening? Dohain asked. Why are all these people here? It is about your visitor yesterday, Sujin said. The small creature you helped. Mr. Kim, that was not a pet. Dohain was confused. Then what was it? Sujin took a deep breath. The Dragon Empire has a delegation on this planet. They have been here for secret negotiations. Yesterday afternoon, the Emperor's daughter went missing for several hours. She paused. You helped her, Mr. Kim. You made shoes for a dragon princess. Do-Hyen felt his stomach drop. A dragon? An actual dragon? Yes, Sujin said. Dragons are shapeshifters. They can look like many different things. The creature you helped was Princess Ryunha, third daughter of Emperor Taejin. Miho had just arrived and heard this. His face went pale. Master, you made shoes for royalty? I did not know, Do-Hyen said weakly. His mind was spinning. Dragons. He had heard of them. Of course. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Dragon Empire. They were ancient, powerful, and very private. They ruled a vast territory and rarely dealt with other species. The dragons want to see you, Sujin said. Now, I am to escort you to their delegation quarters. Do-Hyen nodded slowly. What else could he do? He followed Sujin through the crowd. Reporters shouted questions at him. Cameras flashed. He ignored them all. They took a transport vehicle to a part of the colony Do-Hyen had never seen before. It was heavily guarded. The architecture was different here. The buildings had flowing, elegant designs that seemed almost alive. Everything shimmered with strange colors. The dragons built this section themselves. Sujin explained quietly. They use technology we do not understand. Try not to stare. But Do-Hyen could not help staring. Everything was beautiful and alien at the same time. They entered the largest building. Inside, the ceiling was impossibly high. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at once. And then Do-Hyen saw them. Dragons. Real dragons. Some were in their true forms, massive creatures with scales that caught the light. Others were in various partial forms, mixing dragon and humanoid features. A few looked completely human, but moved with an inhuman grace. At the center of the great hall stood the largest dragon Do-Hyen had ever imagined. He was the size of a small spacecraft. His scales shimmered with every color possible, shifting and changing. His eyes were ancient and golden. This could only be Emperor Taejin. Do-Hyen's knees felt weak. He wanted to run, but he forced himself to stay standing. Several other dragons stood near the Emperor. One of them, a dragon with deep blue scales, spoke with obvious hostility. This is a human? He looks ordinary. Appearances can deceive, my son, the Emperor said. His voice was deep and powerful. It seemed to vibrate through Do-Hyen's entire body. This is Baekhyun, my eldest son and heir. He is protective of our family. Suddenly, a small dragon bounded forward. Do-Hyen recognized her immediately. It was a creature from his shop, but now in her true form. Still small compared to the adult dragons, but clearly draconic. She chirped excitedly and ran to Do-Hyen. Ryunha, stay back, a silver dragon said anxiously. This must be Hayan, the royal guardian. But Ryunha ignored her. She showed her feet to the Emperor, displaying the tiny shoes Do-Hyen had made. They had somehow adapted to her true size. The craftsmanship was clear even from a distance. The Emperor leaned down to examine them. Excellent work, he said. Then he turned his golden eyes to Do-Hyen. Do-Hyen Kim, cobbler of New Seoul, you aided my daughter without knowing who she was. This is interesting. Do-Hyen found his voice. Your Majesty, I apologize. I did not know she was a princess. I thought she was just a hurt creature that needed help. Do not apologize, the Emperor said. That is precisely why I find this interesting. You helped her because she needed help, not because of who she was. Baekhyun snorted. Most beings act differently when they know they are dealing with royalty. This proves nothing. Does it not? The Emperor shifted his gaze to his son, then back to Do-Hyen. Tell me, cobbler, why did you help my daughter? And speak honestly. Do-Hyen thought carefully. Your Majesty, I saw someone in pain. Her feet were cut and bleeding. She came to my shop for help. What kind of craftsman would I be if I turned away someone who needed me? A practical one, Baekhyun said coldly. Most beings would have called animal control, or demanded payment first. My apprentice suggested that. Do-Hyen admitted, but she needed help. I could provide it. To me, it was that simple. The Emperor made a sound that might have been a laugh. Simple. Yes, I suppose it was simple to you. He paused. I was there, Do-Hyen Kim, outside your shop, watching. Do-Hyen's eyes widened. The elderly man in the alley? Indeed. I took human form to search for my daughter. When I sensed her presence in your shop, I stayed hidden. I wanted to see how a human would treat her. The Emperor's eyes seemed to glow brighter. I heard everything you said. I watched how you worked. You treated my daughter with the same respect you would show any customer. I did not know she was your daughter, Do-Hyen said again. Precisely, the Emperor said. You did not know, yet you still acted with kindness. That tells me more about humans than 1,000 diplomatic meetings could. Heian spoke up. Your Majesty, surely you do not mean to... The Emperor raised one massive claw. I have made my decision. He looked directly at Do-Hyen. Do-Hyen Kim, I offer you a position as cultural liaison between the Dragon Empire and humanity. Your role would be to help our peoples understand each other better. The entire hall erupted. Dragons spoke over each other in their own language. Baekhyun looked furious. Even Su-Jin gasped in surprise. Do-Hyen felt dizzy. Your Majesty, I am honored, but I am just a cobbler. I know nothing about diplomacy. I have no political experience. I do not understand why you would choose me. That is exactly why I choose you, the Emperor said. You have something more valuable than political experience. You have genuine compassion. You see beings as individuals worthy of respect, not as tools or threats. Baekhyun stepped forward angrily. Father, this is unwise. He is untrained, unprepared. He will make mistakes that could damage our relations with humanity for centuries. Perhaps, the Emperor said calmly, but traditional diplomacy has brought us no closer to understanding humans. They spread across the galaxy. They are adaptable and unpredictable. We must decide if they are partners or threats. Do-Hyen Kim has shown me that at least some humans possess genuine goodness. He turned back to Do-Hyen. I do not expect an answer now. This is a large decision. You may have 3 days to consider my offer. But know this, whether you accept or refuse, you have earned the friendship of the Dragon Empire. That is no small thing. Do-Hyen bowed, unsure what else to do. Thank you, Your Majesty. I will think carefully about this. Little Rion had chirped and nuzzled his hand. Despite everything, Do-Hyen smiled and patted her head gently. She was still just a child, dragon or not. Su-Jin escorted him out of the dragon quarters. She was quiet until they were alone in the transport. Then she turned to him with wide eyes. Do you understand what just happened? She asked. The Dragon Empire has never offered a liaison position to any species. Never. And they offered it to you, a cobbler from a frontier colony. I understand that I am very confused, Do-Hyen said. Yesterday I was just a shopkeeper. Today I am apparently some kind of hero. You are more than that, Su-Jin said. You are a symbol, a bridge between species. If you accept this position, you could change the future of human-dragon relations. Do-Hyen looked out the window at the familiar streets of New Seoul. His simple life had just become impossibly complicated, and he had 3 days to decide what to do about it. Do-Hyen sat alone in his shop after closing time. The lights were dim. The street outside was quiet. He held a cup of tea, but it had grown cold. He had not taken a single sip. 3 days. The Emperor had given him 3 days to decide about becoming the cultural liaison between humans and dragons. 2 days had already passed. Tomorrow he would have to give his answer. He looked around his small shop. Every tool hanging on the wall had a story. His grandfather had given him some of them. Others he had bought with his first earnings. The workbench was worn smooth from decades of use. This shop was his life. It was simple, honest work. He understood it. But being a liaison, that was something completely different. He knew nothing about politics or diplomacy. He was just a cobbler who had helped a hurt creature. How could that possibly qualify him to represent humanity to an ancient dragon empire? A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Do-Hyen stood up and unlocked it. A tall figure stood outside. It took him a moment to recognize Prince Baekhyun in human form. The Dragon Prince looked stern and serious. "May I come in?" Bekhayun asked. His voice was cold and formal. Dohayan stepped aside. "Of course, Your Highness." Bekhayun walked in and looked around the shop with obvious disdain. "So this is where you work. Small. Simple." He turned to face Dohayan. "I will be direct. You should refuse my father's offer." Dohayan was surprised by the bluntness. "May I ask why?" "Because you are not qualified," Bekhayun said flatly. "You are a simple tradesman. You know nothing of interspecies politics, nothing of the complex history between dragons and other races, nothing of the delicate balance of power in this sector of the galaxy." "You are right," Dohayan admitted. "I know nothing about those things." Bekhayun seemed surprised by the easy agreement. He continued, "The liaison position requires someone who understands diplomacy, someone who can navigate difficult conversations without making mistakes. One wrong word could damage relations between our peoples for generations." "Then why does your father want me?" Dohayan asked quietly. For the first time, Bekhayun's cold expression cracked. Something that looked like fear showed through. "Because he sees in you what he wants to see in all humans. Simple goodness. Kindness without calculation. But one person is not enough to represent an entire species." The prince stepped closer. "If you fail, if you betray our trust, it will confirm every suspicion my people have about humanity. They already fear your expansion across the galaxy. They already question whether humans can be trusted. If you make this worse..." He did not finish the sentence. Dohayan understood. "You are afraid that I will fail, and that failure will mean war." Bekhayun looked away. "I am trying to protect my people. Can you blame me for that?" "No," Dohayan said. "I cannot. You care about your people. That is admirable." He paused. "But I wonder, Your Highness, if you have considered that your fear might be exactly why your father chose me." Bekhayun frowned. "What do you mean?" "Perhaps he is tired of fear," Dohayan said softly. "Perhaps he wants to try something different. Trust instead of suspicion. Understanding instead of calculation." The prince stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. Dohayan locked the door behind him and returned to his cold tea. The next visitor came the following morning. Hayan, the royal guardian, arrived while Dohayan was opening the shop. She was in human form, tall and elegant with silver hair. "Master Dohayan," she greeted him with a slight bow. "May we speak?" "Of course," Dohayan said. He made tea for both of them. They sat at his workbench. Hayan was more measured than Bekhayun had been. "I am not here to tell you what to do," she said, "but I want you to understand what accepting this position would mean." "I am listening," Dohayan said. "The Emperor sees in you a quality he values highly. Simple, genuine kindness. You helped Rianha without knowing who she was, without expecting reward. That impressed him deeply." She sipped her tea. "But you must understand that accepting this role means becoming a symbol." "A symbol?" Dohayan asked. "Yes. To the Emperor, you will represent the best of humanity. To many humans, you will be a hero who brought dragons and humans together. To others, you will be a traitor who sold out to aliens. To suspicious dragons, you will be a test of whether humans can be trusted." She looked at him seriously. "Can you carry that weight?" Dohayan was quiet for a moment. "I do not want to be a symbol. I just want to help people." "I know," Hayan said gently. "But sometimes we do not get to choose our roles. Sometimes they choose us." She stood to leave. "Whatever you decide, make sure it is your decision, not what others expect of you." That afternoon brought the most surprising visitor of all. Little Rianha came to the shop, still in her small dragon form. 2 guards followed her, but waited outside. She was wearing the tiny shoes Dohayan had made. She walked up to him and spoke through a small translation device that hung around her neck. "Master Dohayan, did I cause trouble for you?" Dohayan knelt down to her level. "No, little one, you did not cause any trouble. But everyone is talking about you now. Father wants you to be the liaison. Brother Bekhayun is angry. Hayan is worried." Her voice through the translator sounded sad. "I just wanted my feet to stop hurting." I did not mean to make everything complicated. Do-Hyen smiled and patted her head gently. You did nothing wrong, Rianha. You were hurt, and you asked for help. That took courage. Are you going to say yes? She asked. Will you be the liaison? I do not know yet. Do-Hyen admitted, I am still thinking. Rianha looked at him with her bright, intelligent eyes. You were kind to me when you thought I was just an animal. That is rare. Father says most beings only show respect to those who can reward them or hurt them. But you showed respect to someone who could do neither. She chirped softly. I think that is why Father chose you. After she left, Do-Hyen sat alone again. The third day was ending. Tomorrow morning, he would have to give his answer. He pulled out an old data chip from his desk drawer. It contained photos and videos from Earth, from before the refugee crisis. His grandfather's shop, family gatherings, simpler times. He found a video of his grandfather teaching him to make shoes. The old man's voice came through the speaker, speaking in Korean. Do-Hyen, remember this. A craftsman's job is not just to make things. It is to understand what people need and provide it with care. Every person who comes to you deserves your respect and your best work. Rich or poor, human or alien, it does not matter. You serve the need, not the person's status. Do-Hyen watched the video 3 times. His grandfather had been a wise man. He had helped refugees during the war, making shoes for people who had lost everything. He had never asked for payment from those who could not afford it. He had simply helped because it was right. The shop door opened. Miho came in, looking worried. Master, I heard you have to decide tomorrow. Yes, Do-Hyen said. If you accept, what happens to the shop? What happens to me? The young apprentice tried to sound brave, but fear showed in his voice. Do-Hyen had been thinking about this too. I do not know, Miho. That is part of what makes this decision so hard. This shop is my life. You are like family to me. Leaving all this behind. He trailed off. Miho was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke slowly. Master, do you remember what you told me about craftsmanship? That it is about understanding what someone needs and provide it with care. Yes, Do-Hyen said, surprised. Maybe, Miho said carefully, maybe what humanity and the dragons need right now is someone who can see them as people, not as threats or opportunities, just as beings who need understanding and respect. He looked at his master. You did that for Rianha, without even thinking about it. Maybe that is exactly the kind of liaison they need. Do-Hyen stared at his apprentice. The boy had learned the lesson after all, better than Do-Hyen had realized. That night, Do-Hyen barely slept. He thought about everything. The shop, his grandfather, Baekhyun's fear, Heian's warning, Rihanna's innocent trust, Miho's surprising wisdom. By morning, he had made his decision. He knew what he had to do. It would not be easy. He would probably make mistakes. But he also knew, deep in his heart, that it was a right choice. He dressed carefully in his best clothes. He locked the shop door, perhaps for the last time as just a simple cobbler. Then he walked toward the dragon delegation quarters to give Emperor Taejin his answer. Do-Hyen stood before Emperor Taejin once again. The great hall was filled with dragons and human colonial leaders. Everyone waited to hear his answer. The air felt heavy with expectation. Your Majesty, Do-Hyen began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. I have thought carefully about your offer. I am honored beyond words. But I need you to understand something important. The Emperor's golden eyes focused on him. Speak freely. I am not a diplomat, Do-Hyen said. I am not a politician. I am a cobbler. If I accept this position, I can only do it on my own terms. As someone who believes in treating everyone with respect and dignity, regardless of who they are, Baekhyun made a disgusted sound. Your own terms? How arrogant. But the Emperor raised a claw for silence. What are these terms? I will not abandon my craft, Do-Hyen said firmly. I will still work with my hands. Still make shoes. Still teach Miho. Because that is who I am. I think that is why you chose me. Not despite being a craftsman, but because of it. And the second term? The Emperor asked. I will make mistakes, Do-Hyen said honestly. I will say the wrong thing sometimes, do the wrong thing, but I will always be honest. I will always try to see the person in front of me, not just their title or species. That is all I can promise. For a long moment, the Emperor was silent. Then he began to laugh. It was a deep, joyful sound that shook the entire chamber. Several smaller dragons jumped in surprise. Dohayan Kim, the Emperor said, his voice warm with approval, those are precisely the terms I hoped you would offer. Yes, you will make mistakes. Yes, you will sometimes say the wrong thing. But you will do it with integrity. That is worth more than perfect diplomacy. I accept your conditions, the Emperor continued. You will be our liaison, but you will do it in your own way. As a craftsman first, diplomat second. Perhaps that is exactly what both our peoples need. The announcement sent shockwaves through both communities. Media coverage was intense. Some humans celebrated Dohayan as a hero who brought two great civilizations together. Others questioned whether a simple Kaaba was qualified for such an important role. Within the Dragon Empire, reactions were mixed too. Many elder dragons were skeptical, but younger dragons were curious about humanity and intrigued by this unusual choice. Dohayan's first official act surprised everyone. He kept his shop open. 3 days a week, he still repaired shoes. The other days, he attended diplomatic functions and meetings. He also invited dragon visitors to watch him work. This is how I think best, he explained to Sujin, who had been assigned as his diplomatic advisor. With my hands busy, my mind is clear. Sujin often found herself learning from Dohayan's unconventional approach. He did not follow protocol. He did not use formal diplomatic language. Instead, he talked to dragons the same way he talked to his customers, with respect, honesty, and genuine interest. One day, a dragon master jeweler named Kyungo visited the shop. He was old and proud, known for creating the most beautiful jewelry in the empire. He walked into the small shop and looked around with obvious disdain. So this is where the famous liaison works, Kyungo said, making shoes. How simple. Dohayan did not take offense. He was working on a pair of mining boots. Yes, very simple. Would you like to watch? Kyungo sat down, more out of curiosity than genuine interest. He watched as Dohayan carefully measured each boot. Then Dohayan did something unusual. He made the two soles slightly different from each other. You made them uneven, Kyungo pointed out. That is a mistake. Not a mistake, Dohayan said. The person who wears these walks with their weight shifted to the left. If I make both soles the same, the boots will wear out unevenly again. By adjusting for how they actually walk, the boots will last longer and be more comfortable. Kyungo leaned forward, suddenly interested. You measure each foot individually, even among the same person? Always, Dohayan said. Everyone is different. A good craftsman knows that universal solutions rarely work for individual needs. The dragon jeweler was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke softly. I have been making jewelry for 800 years. I always seek perfect symmetry, perfect balance. But perhaps I have been wrong. Perhaps I should pay more attention to the individual who will wear each piece. This simple conversation started something unexpected. Other dragon craftsmen began visiting Dohayan's shop. They came not for diplomacy, but to understand human craftsmanship. They found that humans' adaptability and individual-focused approach complemented dragons' traditional perfectionism. Heian became a regular visitor too. She brought young dragon hatchlings to learn. The children watched Dohayan work with fascination. He taught them patience, attention to detail, and respect for materials. You have taught me something important, Heian admitted one day. I spent centuries protecting hatchlings by keeping them away from potential dangers. You protected Rihanna by treating her with simple kindness. Both approaches have value. But not everyone was happy with the new relationship. 3 months after Dohayan accepted the position, trouble arrived. A human mining corporation wanted to establish operations in territory the dragons considered sacred. The corporation argued they had legal permits. The dragons saw it as disrespect for their culture. Tensions rose quickly. This was Dohayan's first major diplomatic crisis. Sujin brought him stacks of documents, legal papers, Territorial maps. Historical records. This is complex, though high-end. Both sides have valid points. The corporation has legitimate permits. But the dragon's connection to that space is ancient and deep. Bekhayun was furious. This is exactly what I predicted. Humanity's greed knows no bounds. They see valuable resources and disregard everything else. The corporation CEO, a woman named Yunji, was equally frustrated. We followed all the rules. We got all the permits. Now they tell us we cannot mine there because of some old tradition. Professional negotiators tried for weeks to find a solution. Nothing worked. Both sides dug in deeper. Some people whispered that war might come. Then Do Hyen did something unexpected. He invited both sides to his shop, not for formal negotiations, just for tea and conversation. Yunji arrived skeptical. Mr. Kim, with respect, we have lawyers for this. What can a cobbler contribute? Do Hyen smiled gently. Maybe a different perspective. He showed her a pair of heavy mining boots he was working on. Do you know what makes good mining boots? Yunji shrugged. Durability? Support? Those things, yes. Do Hyen agreed, but also knowing where they will be worn. What terrain? What conditions? You cannot make good boots for a miner without understanding the mine. He turned to Bekhayun, who attended in dragon form. Your Highness, tell us about the sacred space, not the legal arguments. Tell us why it matters to your people. Bekhayun was caught off guard by the simple request. Slowly, he began to speak. He described how young dragons made their first flights in that region, how the thermal currents were perfect for teaching flight, how generations of dragons had their first memories of freedom in that sky. Yunji listened carefully. Her expression changed. I did not know that. The surveys just showed empty airspace over mineral-rich ground. That is the problem, Do Hyen said gently. Both sides are looking at maps and documents. But this is not about territory. It is about people. Dragons who need that space for their children. Humans who need resources for their colonies. Over the next hours, Do Hyen facilitated a conversation. He asked questions, made tea, occasionally shared stories from his shop. He did not push for solutions. He just helped them talk to each other instead of at each other. Gradually, something shifted. Yunji and Bekhayun started listening to each other. By evening, they had sketched out a compromise. The mining operation would relocate to an adjacent sector. The dragons would allow limited human research stations in the sacred space for studying flight dynamics. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Both sides had accepted. Su Jin was amazed. How did you do that? Professional negotiators tried for weeks. Do Hyen shrugged. I just treated them both like customers. Everyone who comes to my shop wants something. My job is to understand what they really need, not just what they say they want. Usually, once people feel heard, solutions become possible. Word of the success spread quickly. Other conflicts began coming to Do Hyen's shop, not to the diplomatic offices. To the small cobbler's shop, where a craftsman helped people understand each other. Even Bekhayun softened. After the mining dispute resolution, he visited Do Hyen privately. I still think you are out of your depth sometimes, the Dragon Prince admitted. But perhaps that is an advantage. You have not learned the proper ways to fail at understanding each other. Do Hyen smiled. Maybe that is the best qualification for this job after all. 1 year had passed since Do Hyen first made shoes for a small creature in his shop. So much had changed. His little cobbler shop had become famous across both human and dragon territories. But Do Hyen still opened the door each morning the same way, still made tea, still greeted each customer with the same respect. Mio had grown confident in his skills. He ran the shop several days a week now while Do Hyen traveled to various colonies and dragon worlds. The young apprentice had learned that craftsmanship and diplomacy were not different things. They were the same skill applied to different materials. One morning, Miho received surprising news. A major diplomatic organization wanted to hire him. They had watched his work with Do Hyen and were impressed. It was an incredible opportunity. Prestige, travel, influence, everything a young person could dream of. but it would mean leaving the shop, leaving his master. Miho came to Do-Hyen that evening, looking troubled. "Master, I receive a job offer today." Do-Hyen set down the boot he was repairing. "Tell me about it." Miho explained the offer. As he spoke, his excitement was clear, but so was his worry. "If I accept, what happens to you? What happens to the shop?" Do-Hyen smiled gently. "Do you remember when you first came to me? You thought traditional craftsmanship was pointless, that machines could do everything better." Miho looked embarrassed. "I was young and foolish." "No, you were inexperienced. There is a difference." Do-Hyen stood and put his hand on Miho's shoulder. "What have you learned since then?" "That craftsmanship is not about the tools or the product," Miho said slowly. "It is about understanding what someone needs and providing it with care. It is about seeing the person, not just a task." "Exactly," Do-Hyen said. "And where did you learn that?" "Here, watching you work." Do-Hyen nodded. "The shop was never the point, Miho. It is just where I practice my craft. You can practice that same craft anywhere. In a diplomatic office, in a government building, anywhere people need understanding and care. Take the position." Do-Hyen continued. "Use what you have learned. And remember, whether you are negotiating treaties or repairing shoes, it is all the same craft. You are just working with different materials." Miho's eyes were wet. "Thank you, Master, for everything." After Miho left, Do-Hyen sat alone in his shop. He felt proud. His greatest achievement was not the Human-Dragon Alliance. It was teaching his apprentice that compassion was a universal skill. A few days later, Do-Hyen received an unexpected visitor. Lil Rianha came to the shop. She was bigger now, almost the size of a horse. But she still wore the shoes Do-Hyen had made, which had somehow continued to adapt to her growing feet. "Master Do-Hyen," she said through her translator device, "my shoes are finally worn out. I have outgrown them. Can you make me new ones?" Do-Hyen laughed with delight. "Of course. But tell me, why do you want shoes? Most dragons do not wear them." Rihanna looked at her feet thoughtfully. "Because when I wear the shoes you made, I remember that day. How you did not know who I was. But you helped me anyway. How you spoke to me with respect, even though you thought I was just an animal. Father says that moment changed everything," she continued. "But for me, it was simpler. It was the first time someone outside my family treated me with kindness just because I needed it, not because I am a princess." Do-Hyen knelt down and began measuring her feet, just as he had that first day. "You know, little one, you changed my life too. I was content being just a cobbler. You reminded me that sometimes our simple actions have bigger consequences than we imagine." As he worked on the new shoes, Rianha watched with fascination. "Master Do-Hyen, will you teach me how to make things with care?" "I would be honored," Do-Hyen said. "Though I should warn you, learning craftsmanship takes patience and practice." "That is okay," Rihanna said. "Father says the most important things always do." And so Rihanna became Do-Hyen's new apprentice, the first dragon to learn human craftsmanship. She came to the shop 3 times a week. She learned to measure carefully, to cut leather precisely, to understand that each customer was unique. News of this spread quickly. A dragon princess learning to make shoes. Some dragons thought it was beneath her status. Some humans thought it was strange. But Emperor Taejin approved completely. "She is learning more than craftsmanship," the emperor told Do-Hyen during one of his visits. "She is learning to see value in simple work, to respect all beings regardless of their station. These are lessons she will need as a future leader." The emperor often visited the shop in his human disguise. He would sit quietly in the corner, drinking tea and watching Do-Hyen work. They rarely spoke during these visits, but there was a comfortable understanding between them. One day, the emperor spoke. "I knew, when I watched you with Rianha that first day, I knew you were exactly what was needed." "How could you know?" Do-Hyen asked. "I am just a cobbler who made some shoes." The emperor smiled. "I have lived for over 3,000 years, Do-Hyen Kim. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve and adapt. Do you know what determines whether civilizations thrive or destroy each other? Dohayan shook his head. It is not technology or military power, the emperor said. It is not resources or territory. It is whether individuals within those civilizations can see each other as beings worthy of respect, rather than just obstacles or resources. You saw my daughter, disguised as an animal, and treated her with the same care you would give anyone in need, not because of who she was, but because of who you are. That quality is rarer than you think, and more valuable than any diplomatic skill. 5 years passed. Dohayan's shop became a symbol of cooperation between species. Young dragons apprenticed with human craftsmen. Human artisans traveled to dragon worlds to learn ancient techniques. Cultural exchange flourished. Miho became a successful liaison in his own right, known for his unconventional but effective approach. He still returned to the shop occasionally to help Dohayan, saying it kept him grounded. Rihanna's shoes became famous. She made them for dragons and humans alike, treating each customer with the same respect Dohayan had shown her. Her work was prized not for its perfection, but for what it represented, a bridge between worlds. Even Baekhyun had changed. He visited the shop regularly now, often bringing problems for Dohayan to help solve. The proud dragon prince had learned that sometimes the simplest approach was the most effective. One evening, as Dohayan was closing the shop, Rihanna asked him a question. Master, do you ever regret how your life changed? You could have stayed a simple cobbler, unknown and peaceful. Dohayan looked around his shop, at Rihanna bent over her work, at the photos on the wall showing dragons and humans working together, at the worn tools his grandfather had given him. I am still a simple cobbler, he said with a gentle smile. I just have a wider workshop now. That day you came to my shop with hurt feet, I did what any decent craftsman would do. I saw someone in need, and I helped them. Everything that followed was just a natural consequence of treating people with dignity. He returned to his work, his skilled hands shaping leather with the same care he had shown that first day. The same care he showed every customer. The same care that had changed the relationship between two great civilizations. Because sometimes the greatest acts of heroism are not grand gestures. They are simple choices. Choosing to help someone in pain. Choosing to treat everyone with respect. Choosing kindness over convenience. Dohayan had never set out to be a hero. He had never wanted to change the galaxy. He had just wanted to make good shoes and help people. But in doing so, he proved something important about humanity. That humans at their best were not defined by their technology or their expansion across the stars. They were defined by their capacity for simple, genuine compassion. Their ability to see another being suffering and choose to help, regardless of who that being was or what they could offer in return. And in that truth lay humanity's greatest strength, not in grand power or mighty achievements, but in the quiet dignity of one person treating another with respect and care, one small act of kindness at a time. The cobbler's shop on Seongram 7 remained open for many decades, long after Dohayan's story became legend, long after the relationship between humans and dragons became strong and stable. The shop stood as a reminder that sometimes the most important changes begin with the smallest actions. A simple cobbler, a hurt creature, a moment of kindness. That was all it took to change a galaxy. And perhaps that is all it ever takes.